Groper, we'll start our next interview with a Sand Groper independent member for Curtin, Kate Chaney. Thank you for your time. Can you start with where this is at? Because we had this strange sort of briefing with Labor that people had to sign NDAs for, which is the latest Labor thing apparently. Where do you think this is headed in terms of what Labor will actually do?
Well, I would like to think that they are yet to come to a decision, because certainly the rumoured package that was leaked last week does not go far enough. So 14 months ago, a committee that I was on recommended a full ban of all ads for online gambling and 30 other recommendations. And I really want to see that happening, because every day Australians lose $68 million gambling. So the delay is not great, but at this point I think I hope that the government is seeing the reaction that the rumours from last week has caused and is seriously thinking about taking it further and showing some guts.
Tim Costello is a big part of this push. He says no partial ban. We saw that with smoking, so he's equating it to smoking. You can't smoke safely. You can gamble safely. Is that a fair comment? There are plenty of people that have a few bets on the Melbourne Cup each year, or might have $10 on the footy each year. The lottery's gambling as well. Is that a bit of a false equivalent?
Well, we're not banning gambling. We're just stopping the promotion of gambling to young people and everywhere you look. And what we
But it's not just young people, isn't it? It's stopping it altogether.
Well, that's right.
As happened with cigarettes.
Yeah, but one of the things that we've seen is that gambling has become normalised as part of sport, and that's having a huge impact on how young people perceive sport. So what we heard from people who had experienced problems with gambling in the inquiry was that it's really hard to stop when everywhere you look there are triggers and inducements and more reminders. So I think we do need to treat it like a public health issue. In other countries it has been treated like that, but we have a bit of a Swiss cheese approach to regulating it, and that's what needs to shift.
What about the role of social media? Presumably the ads could remain on social media, could they? Or how could you ban them?
Well, actually, the rumoured package that we heard about last week was a ban on digital, but not on broadcast TV.
Right.
I think probably because the government's more willing to take on Meta and Google than it is to take on the commercial broadcast media. But that'll be a really important part of any reform package, because the problem is, young blokes are at home with their phone 24/7, and the gambling companies have 200 pieces of data on every customer, which they use to try to maximise revenue, to know when you're most susceptible and when you're most likely to bet more.
In terms of social media, though, or even if you ban gambling ads, the other thing expressed by one of the Vox Pops there was what other people have said, going sort of underground. There are already people using a VPN to, sit there on a phone and gamble on a hypothetical slot machine or roulette wheel. So is that going to be a concern? When it's that unregulated, you're really talking about the wild, wild west.
Well, maybe, but I suppose saying we're not trying to stamp out gambling completely. We're just trying to stop it from being insidious and everywhere we look because of the huge amount of advertising. So there will always be ways that you can gamble, and that's not the concern. It's the extent and depth of the way it's embedded in sport and in people, especially kids' everyday viewing.
I want to get a sense of how important this is to you. I mean, we've seen News Poll today suggesting a minority Labor government is looking more and more likely. When it comes to gambling reform, is that something you'd consider a non-negotiable in terms of giving Labor a supply and confidence if they were to only reach a minority government?
Well, I hope this will be resolved in the next few weeks. So the next election, I think, is not till next May, and a lot will happen between now and then. But right now, this is an opportunity for the government to show some guts and actually do something about this. And I think it says a lot that the crossbench are the ones standing up on this, giving a voice to the voiceless. Now we have, I think, backbenchers in both major parties who would really like to see this reform, but they have become part of the voiceless because they can't actually speak up.
Do you think electoral reform will be dealt with as well? Because we'd heard that it might be introduced this week, those changes on donation limits and so on, and the other changes that Don Farrell has been pursuing. Are you confident that this will be done before the election?
I'm not confident anymore that it will be implemented before the election. I'm still hopeful that we will have an electoral reform package in place. The government has committed before the last election to transparency so that people know who's donating the money to their political candidates before they vote. That hasn't happened yet. I think at least that should happen before the next election. Time is running out. I don't think we'll see it this fortnight, but I'm still hopeful that we do see some reform because we need to retain trust in our political system.
The Liberals are quite bullish when it comes to Curtin. What's your sense of the mood on the ground in your seat?
Well, I think people in Curtin have liked having a different way of doing politics, and the dissatisfaction with the major parties from the last election I don't think has gone away. Nothing has really changed since then. I do a lot of events in the community that are well attended. People are interested in having a say and actually having a representative who's accountable to them, not to some party. So I'll be offering that option at the next election and people can make that choice.
Are you expecting any donation support from Climate 200, Simon Holmes Accord?
Well, that's completely up to Climate 200 and the 11,000 donors who donate to them. I suspect that they will support me, and I'd happily take that because I think I'm values aligned with those 11,000 people who want to see politics done differently. So I have no problem with that.
Would you be free if you did that to be open to nuclear power?
Well, absolutely. I'm free to be open to nuclear power. The problem with it is that the science and the economics just doesn't back it up. And it makes perfect sense in other countries. But in Australia, where we have comparative advantages in solar and wind and big space and experience with these sorts of projects, it just kicks the can down the road. So I'm not against it. If the technology changes or the economics change, then it may make sense as part of a package.
It might end up being the base load instead of gas. I mean, if renewables, some of those projects are proving difficult as well to get the scale of. If we end up with sort of 15 or 20% gas by 2050, wouldn't nuclear have been a better option? It's lower emission.
So if we're still thinking about a 20th century energy mix, then yes. But because the economics have changed so much in the last 10 years and renewables are cheapest, we don't have base load that doesn't change and we top it up with the variable. We need to work out how to use the cheapest stuff whenever we can and top that up with something variable. And nuclear doesn't do that very well. So I think from a technological perspective, nuclear doesn't make sense in the energy mix that we're likely to have by the time we're able to implement it.
I guess some of the question marks around how batteries go and so on, but we'll see. I suspect neither of us will be sitting there at that time, but someone will find a solution. Kate Chaney.
I'll still be there.
You'll still be there. All right, 2050. She's running for a while and she's going to win apparently. Kate Chaney.